It's the DMZ America Podcast with me, cartoonist Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
And I am editorial cartoonist coming to you from the right, Scott Stantis.
And
I don't know why I did it that way, but
it is Saturday, March 15th, 2025. I don't know if you want to troubleshoot this, Scott, but your mic sounds terrible.
Give me a second. Why don't you blather on about something else?
Blather? I don't have blathering in my repertoire. I am blather free. This is a blather free zone. Okay, I can blather. Okay, so anyway, thank you everybody.
Okay, how's that?
Still the same. So everybody is looking at the cases of what's going on at the American border and inside the United States. We'll talk a little bit about that today. The case of Mahmoud Khalil, which has made national news. He's the Columbia University graduate. He graduated not just from the school, but he also graduated from graduate school. And he is now a fully fledged prisoner of the Trump administration. He was snatched up in front of his pregnant wife.
Guest.
Yes, he's a guest. He's been snatched up and dragged down to Louisiana. There's a federal judge deciding what to do about that. I assume, well, we'll talk about that. But I mean, the real question here is, are we safe? So let me just sort of go over some of the reasons I'm asking that question. So Mahmoud Khalil, for people who have been who not that familiar with this case, was a leading figure in the Columbia University anti-Israel pro-Palestine protests that rocked the campus last year in the spring and became the first of numerous encampments that spread across college campuses across the United States. And they were very contentious. But by all accounts, he wasn't viewed as a hothead or a violent figure. If anything, he was the kind of dude who negotiated between the campus security guards and pro-Israel protesters and the pro-Palestine protesters to try to bring down the temperature whenever possible. He is married to a U.S. citizen. He's ethnically Palestinian. Grew up in a Palestinian refugee camp in Syria. He's a Syrian national with holding a green card. He's a permanent resident of the United States presumably through his marriage. He's waiting for a baby. That baby is due in about a month or less. At this point, it looks more likely than not that the kid will be born while his or her father is in detention at ICE. The ICE officers approached him on the streets of New York City, not far from where I'm speaking to you now, in the evening, about 8 o'clock at night, and informed him that his student visa was being revoked and that he was going to be deported to Syria. He told the officers, "I don't have a student visa." They obviously didn't know that. They assumed that they were just going to be able to kick him out. He said, "Well, I have a green card," and the ICE agent said, "Well, okay, well, we'll revoke that too." So they revoked. So they are trying to do that. The administration has made very clear that this is a retaliation for his criticism of Israel. They have not alleged any wrongdoing, not even double parking or parking in front of a fire hydrant or expired bicycle registration tag. Nothing. Okay, so he is not accused of having done anything wrong here in the United States whatsoever. Normally, in order to have your green card revoked in the United States, you have to commit not just a felony, but a very serious one, and you have to have been convicted. It usually doesn't happen. Even if you have a green card and you do commit a felony, usually you are punished appropriately, but you are not. They don't strip you of your green card. It's very unusual. So that came in conjunction with this very bizarre incident at the Tijuana border crossing between Tijuana, Mexico, and San Diego, California, where a German national, a tourist, and his American U.S. girlfriend both were seized and arrested and detained by ICE. The German guy, they were detained for 9 days. The German guy was detained for 9 days. She was detained, I think, for about a day and a half. She's a U.S. citizen. I want to be very clear on that. She was very clear. She had identifying papers. There was never any confusion about that matter. They shackled her. They apparently roughed her up as well as her boyfriend. They were not told they were never told what they had allegedly done wrong. She said, "I'm a U.S. citizen. Can you do this?" And they said, "We can do whatever we want." And basically, this seems like a clear case. Also, if you see the pictures of them, racism clearly wasn't an issue. This is a white couple, very educated, upper class. She's pretty. He's a good-looking guy. I mean, this is like, honestly, exactly the kind of people that you would think that Nazis would be happy to see come into the United States. So it's just really, the whole thing is bizarre. There's also this incident with this British cartoonist who is 26 years old, who was visiting the United States. She was exiting north of here on the highway to try to get into Canada, to go to Quebec, probably Montreal, and there was some kind of glitch with her Canadian visa. So the Canadian said, "Oh, you got to go back to the United States." There was no doubt that her visa to the U.S. was valid. Nevertheless, she was picked up as an enemy alien and immediately disappeared into the ICE detention system, where her family doesn't even know where she is. The British government doesn't seem to have been leaning too hard on the Trump administration to find out. So, this basically,
that one there was a reason, right? I mean, because she had participated in a protest. By the way, does my mic sound better now?
Much better, thank you.
Okay, great. My understanding of her case is that she participated in a pro-Palestinian protest, but you get to do that when you come to these hallowed shores. You get that opportunity. You have the right of free speech. So she disappeared?
She's vanished. Yeah, her family is at their wit's end, and they're looking for her.
Oh, God, could you imagine?
Apparently, she there is some sort of computerized detention system in the federal system where you basically put in a person's name, and it's supposed to tell you like where they are. John Kiriakou, my friend and former colleague at Sputnik, a CIA whistleblower, he said that they call this diesel therapy. And basically, it's like they disappear you into the system. They move you around like the old shell game, so that by the time the computer figures out that you're in Piscataway, New Jersey, you've already been moved to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. So you're just moving around all the time. They can never find you. It's in order to deprive you. First of all, you're exhausted because you're constantly being moved around, but also you're deprived of access to legal counsel, which you would otherwise be legally entitled to. And you're also, your family can't find you and say, "Don't worry, we're hiring an attorney. We're trying to get you out." So you're basically isolated within the system. It's like basically, it's Soviet. It's the Gulag. You've been vanished. And they can kill you if they want.
Well, to what end? I mean, other than the protest, there's no other reason. I mean, that's where I'm getting. I mean, this, and I know that we're saying what we know at this point, where things, where things are. But this British woman, and the fact that she's a cartoonist, obviously piqued our interest.
Yes.
It's
not a particularly political cartoonist.
Is that right?
No, I think she's like more like a sort of autobio, light humor.
Okay. Yeah, this is. I mean, all of this trend, and we're looking at other trends about. We're going to scoop you up using ICE as the enforcer for your. And I'm not sure how many of our listeners or viewers watched Trump's speech to the Justice Department yesterday. It was very, very terrifying.
I watched
for a
it.
myriad. Did you? I don't think I'm underreporting it. It was saying I'm going to go after my enemies. They're going to pay. Now I didn't say it overtly, but the implication is we're going to use the Justice Department to do it. You and I have talked a lot on this podcast, Ted, about, is this Germany 1933? Is this Nazism? Is it fascism? Is it any of those things? And I got to say now at this stage with these actions, which are just going to there's going to be more and more of them. Mm-hmm. Is it hyperbole for us to ask, are we next? are you next? You, the listener, are you, does this stop anywhere? I mean, if he's picking people up and it's crystal clear that they are, and has every intention of expanding a program of picking up people who dissent against what Donald Trump is trying to do, that makes the United States something very different than its, its ego and its vanity thinks that it is, because this is ugly, ugly, ugly stuff, Ted. I don't see it stopping because no one's standing up to stop it. The left really doesn't have any legs to stand on this one, especially with, oh God, help me again, the Palestinian fellow who
Mahmoud Khalil.
And Khalil, I just think it's hilarious when the university left stand up and say free speech when they delighted in shouting down every right wing or conservative speaker who ever came to campus. So, free speech means free speech, folks. That means for you, for me.
Free speech for me, not for thee.
Exactly. And that's where I think they really don't have a leg to stand on. I think they're right to protest, but it's one of those, are you kidding? Hypocrite.
Well, I mean, I would love to see leftists come to the defense of conservatives when they're being shouted down and censored, and I would love to see the other way around happen too.
Yeah,
but you and I know we don't see that,
and we never will, because hypocrisy. Thy name is human. It's just how things are. So, I mean, all of this meandering gets to my question to you, Ted, and to our viewers and listeners. What is this? I mean, is this yet one more step towards 1933? We've talked about editorial cartoonists, and we have a lot of friends in the profession who, for years, have been saying, "We're under just duress. We're under stress. We're next." And Ted and I would just sort of giggle because, quite frankly, editorial cartooning hasn't been relevant for a decade. Right. So why in the world would you think that? I'm starting to think now maybe we're on a list. I'm not sure how many of you people out there remember Nixon's enemies list. Herblock, the three-time Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist for the Washington Post, was on the first list, and Paul Conrad, who was a notorious egomaniac, was very pissed off that he was only on the second list, but there were cartoonists on that list.
I would have been angry too. I would have been like, what am I, chopped liver?
Come on, I hate this guy. Are we there? Is this... I mean, I don't want to be that podcast like, these asshole Democrats, Ted, quite frankly, who are, oh, Joe Biden was addled. Who knew? Well, this podcast and all of us knew. I don't want to be the guy, 2 years from now, and we're going to go, oh, all of our civil liberties are gone. Who could have guessed that would have happened? I want to be ahead of the curve, as we have been so often before. And I keep tiptoeing around to ask a question. Here's the question. Are we there, Ted? Is this 1933? Should we be scared?
I think we're there. Yes. Look, and the thing is, the question now is this: at this point, they've already crossed the line into fascist moves. What's interesting to me is that they didn't try to gin up any kind of chart, like bullshit. You can, I think it's Beria, the Soviet head of the NKVD, who famously said, "You show me the man, you show me the man, I'll show you the crime." I mean, you can find something that anybody's done wrong, right? I mean, someone, you can find out they fudged their taxes, they did something. And the thing is, they're not doing that with this guy Khalil. I've got to think that that's a feature, not a bug. I think the Trump administration is sending a clear message here. We're not going to look for excuses. We're not going to nail you on some predicate. We are actually going to openly go after you because of your opinions that we disagree with and don't like. So the only thing that Khalil is accused of here is not liking Israel. Okay, that's it. That's the only thing that he's done wrong. And so the administration is willing to take this all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court to find out if the court will, and to keep this guy on ice, risking that, he could die in detention. People do die. I mean, he may need some medication that he can't get. They usually don't. For example, I have asthma. I would not have access to an inhaler if they arrested me. I'm sure about that. They do not, you don't get any medical care unless you're like at death's door. There have been people in ICE prisons who have died of all sorts of cancers. One guy, his penis rotted off from penile cancer. They just don't take care of you. In terms of, you get no dental care whatsoever.
Dear God.
If you have a cavity, they don't fix it. The prison dentist will offer to pull your tooth. That's it. So, I mean, it's savagery inside the U.S. penal system and detention system. And so, they're willing to risk this. And the protests, which have been ongoing and very robust, these are the first truly robust post January 20th protests against Trump, and they're ongoing to try to free Khalil. They're saying you can be arrested for speech. A green card isn't enough. When you have this guy Tom Honan, Trump's new border czar, you have him say, "Oh, we can detain U.S. citizens just for any reason whatsoever, just for fun." Okay, that's a major problem. I mean,
yes,
the green card thing is a major problem too. And there's a factoid that a lot of people are unaware of, which is that, and I don't know if you know this, Scott, but ICE is allowed to operate anywhere within a 100-mile zone within a U.S. border. So, like on land. So, for example, if you are I think you may be in the zone. If you're 100 miles or less away from the Gulf of Mexico in Alabama, you are in
Gulf of America.
You are in Gulf of America. You're in ICE territory. Here in New York City, I'm much closer than 100 miles away from. That's why ICE was allowed to go to this guy's. So apparently, and so as you know, demographically, I don't know, 80% of Americans probably live within 100 miles of the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and then of course the southern part of the United States, like all along, the Florida coast, all that, a lot of people live near coastline within 100 miles, right? And a lot of stuff that might not think of as particularly coastal is coastal. Philly, Baltimore. I mean, it's a lot. Washington, D.C.
Chicago. There's a really big lake right next to it.
Right, and that's the Canadian border, right? Detroit. So the point is that, a lot of Americans live in that zone. Now, ICE has already, over the years, set up checkpoints and arrested people, on highways. They usually do this along, like, the Texas border, the border with Mexico, but it's not exclusive. They can do it anywhere. So what I want to really, focus on, Scott, is the point that you brought up, which is this issue of, you brought up a lot, but I think, nobody's really stopping them, right? So look at the case of Mahmoud Khalil. There's been, Chuck Schumer hasn't had a thing to say about this. Nancy Pelosi hasn't. Bernie Sanders has not issued any statement. Bernie Sanders was approached by activists, and he basically told them to fuck off. And he said, "We're working on it." Working on what? Write something. Have a 26-year-old write something and then sign it. How hard is that? I mean, obviously what's happening here is this is the power of the Israel lobby and AIPAC. And it's gross and disgusting. And I mean, this is a green card holder. A green card holder is basically a citizen who can't vote. They're vetted. They can do, they've been completely vetted. Once you're at that point, becoming a citizen is pretty much like, if you want to, you can. Right. So that you've gotten over the big hump. The U.S. already knows you're not dangerous. So the fact that they're threatening to revoke his status over his opinions. Right. And they're alleging things that probably aren't even true, that he was pro-Hamas. There's no evidence for that. But, you're allowed to be pro-Hamas. That is protected speech. I mean,
of course.
And so, you can be like, "Oh, ISIS! I love the way they chop those heads. That's awesome." You can do that. So, I mean, but they're alleging that it's not. And Democrats
don't you think
are completely folding? They are not doing anything.
Isn't this the Trump administration and all the evildoers and evil actors he has in his administration, testing the waters to see what will make the Americans stand up and take notice and respond. Right now it's this Khalil, who's a green card holding, but not an American citizen. This smells, and the reason this smells
with an American wife.
The reason this smells is because, to my mind, Ted, it feels like they're, like I said, testing the waters. They're testing to see how far they can push this idea that we can prosecute our enemies. Mm-hmm. And now that, this is attached to, border crossings, is attached to, immigration, hot button issue. Most, people are very uninformed about it. That's a nice way of saying they're stupid, which they most certainly are.
But also that information, like how many people know about that 100-mile zone? I mean, it's obscure.
It came as a surprise to me. I had no idea. The
media is not that good about reporting it.
And the courts, hoping that the courts are going to step up and defend your celebrities.
The ad for Smith and Wesson, right? Like when seconds count, the cops are minutes away. It's like when hours count, the courts are years away, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's hilarious, right? I mean, I hope his attorneys told him when they finally got to talk to him, like, this is going to be a while, sit tight. It's going to be months, maybe years, because he's not getting out anytime soon. There was a hearing, an emergency injunction hearing imposed and renewed on Wednesday in the Southern District Federal Court here in New York, where a judge was very skeptical of the administration, but did not order him released. The judge is like, okay, well, I'm going to need some time to study these. I'm going to renew this. You can't deport him to Syria. I'm going to need some time to read these documents. I'm like, okay, you had the hearing was scheduled 2 days earlier, Your Honor. I know, Lutece has like that awesome French dinner you had to go to the night before. You couldn't skip that and maybe read these documents over the last 48 hours and then come in and say, I've read everything and here's what I think. Really? But that's how the legal system is.
It is. It's slow. It's, what's the old adage, justice delayed is justice denied. Well, there's a lot of denied justice in this world, and especially in this country, because the legal system is so bogged down, so full. And they've talked about, which is really helpful, talked about fixing that issue, which of course they never have, because they're talking about it. They're busy talking. And
I think that's a feature, not a bug, because that keeps the attorneys' fees high. It keeps the whole system all the judges, the judicial industrial complex keeps going and going and going, right? Everybody's making money except you and me.
Excuse me. So and I know it's impossible to say, although frankly, our predictions have been pretty spot on the last few years, Ted.
Yeah, sadly.
What's next?
Probably more outrage. And I don't know the exact what or how. I do know the basic. Well, I guess I don't know the how. I know the what, right? The what is this administration is going to continue to push the envelope as far as it can go. And by the way, I think it's worth pointing out, as much as I've been trying to be bent over backwards to be fair to Trump, and I'm happy about some things that he's doing, like, being, especially on the foreign policy front. I got to say, he is a maniac. And, the speech that you mentioned at the DOJ yesterday, aside from, there's so many things to unpack there. I would begin with the fact that he is addled. Just think about, he's that old man who just talks and talks and talks and runs off telling you all these stories, does not care if you're listening, repeats himself constantly, and just runs off at the mouth. And you're like, okay, I can't tell. Are you senile? Are you an asshole? Or are you both? I'm going to go with both here. But the point is, that speech alone, if we were a properly functioning representative democracy, he'd be 25th Amendmented for that speech alone. it would be like, this guy, he's not fit. I mean, look at him. It's worrisome. Okay. That speech by itself, and he gives one like that multiple times a day, but that speech alone is like, it's like the Biden debate. It's like, holy shit, that guy's the president of the United States. It's terrifying. And then, like, there's the fact that he's, like you said, venting and raging and promising to politicize.
Yeah.
And did you notice all the applause? These are all employees of the Department of Justice. And they're all like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so those people shall all be fired too.
Well, I'm kind of wondering how many of them were actually Justice Department employees and how many of them were political cronies, which both sides tend to do and ship them to these different events. But the applause for all of this inane, some would even say insane mutterings. I think you're right. I think we're going to see more
golfing, all the golfing comments, all the stuff about his golf game, and I don't know, the coach that he knew, and like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Well, the golf thing, I always wonder, here's an administration that is clearly demanding that federal employees not work remotely, and he's in Mar-a-Lago every other day.
Good point.
I think we're going to see an escalation, an uptick, and it's going to be along the lines of those, that chestnut, every civics classroom when we were kids had it hanging up. First they came for the Blumk and I said nothing, and then they came for the other and I said nothing, and then they came for me,
Martin Niemöller,
and no one was around to say anything. I think we're heading in those. They're going to go after. They're going to go after peripheral people, minorities. I'm not sure if you looked at this list that the White House just issued this morning of the countries that they're going to have a travel ban against many. They're going to have
poor Vanuatu.
Yeah, what they ever do to anybody?
All they're doing is fishing and trying to keep their country like above sea level.
All of these, and it was it's every country in Africa,
pretty much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on this list. And it's just, I mean, the travel ban is Afghanistan, Cuba. I'm trying to think of some of the others. But, so, okay, you can kind of make
Dominica.
North Korea.
What did they do?
Wait, are they on the list?
I think so. Yeah. I'm going to look it up. Yeah. Keep going.
Well, I'm just saying it's, where is it? Here you go. But for Orange, this will surprise some people. Russia's on that. The visas are sharply restricted. Belarus, Eritrea, Haiti, Laos, Myanmar, Pakistan, Russia, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, and Turkmenistan.
By the way, what the fuck did Turkmenistan do? I mean, it's like there's no radical Islamists there. It's not. Is that
right?
No, it's a Soviet style authoritarian dictatorship of the kind that Donald Trump, very much admires. But what did they do?
Well, and so the red or the all travel ban. This is the travel ban.
Oh yeah, Bhutan. What did they do? Hanging out in their Himalayan mountain kingdom. They're just a bunch of Buddhists.
And they have a really bitchin' flag, by the way.
That's true.
Afghanistan, Cuba, Iran, Libya, North Korea, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Venezuela, and Yemen are on the travel ban.
And I thought we were trying to have a rapprochement with Venezuela so that we could get their oil.
I thought we were doing that I thought we were trying to defrost relations with Iran. Maybe this is one of the bargaining chips. But the yellow is the 60 days to address concerns. And seriously, it is every African country. It's like...
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
I'm laughing because
there's a lot of countries in Africa, though. Yeah. Like Central African Republic's not there. I can name some. Mozambique's not there. I can see. There's
they not?
Missing.
No. Mozambique has a great flag too. They have a weapon on theirs. It's one of the few flags that actually has
Madagascar is not on there. I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. Africa does have a lot of countries.
So it's a huge continent. My point is that, you're going to see them going after the weakest and the least represented in our culture and in our society. And that's where this slow build is going to begin. or it has already begun, quite frankly. Listen, Khalil, I disagree with the guy completely. And Ted and I can do another podcast about Gaza, and we probably should, Mara Gaza, resort and casinos. But that's not the point, folks. The point, simply put, is, do you have First Amendment rights in the United States of America?
Mhm.
It doesn't even matter if you're a citizen. If the courts have ruled
You don't even
several
have to have a
times,
green card. Yeah.
you don't have to have any card. Once your foot is on American soil,
You can
you're
be a legal immigrant.
protected. Exactly. Your rights are protected by the Constitution. All of them are extended to anybody who is standing on the shores of this great country.
Although administrations have repeatedly tried to question
Yes.
that, right? Like Bush saying, well, if you're an enemy combatant, a category that does not exist in law, then we can deny you your habeas corpus rights.
No, but it sounds awesome. Come on.
I mean, what's the point of habeas? What is the point? I mean, it seems to me like, really, when you learn about habeas corpus, right, this 1,000-year-old right that goes back to the Magna Carta, you would think that the way this works is, okay, hey, my name is, hello, Mr. 1-800 Abogado. My name is Mahmoud Khalil. I'm in an immigration lockup. They're not charging me with anything. They're trying to deport my ass to Syria. Can you help? They should be able to go to a judge, habeas hearing, boom, that day. And the judge should be like, all right, government, put up or shut up. And like, I'm giving you a whole hour to think about your response. A whole hour. I'm going to go out and get a bagel. I'll be back. And it's like, oh, if you don't have a good answer for me, you got to let this fucker go. That's really, truly like what they should. That's how this should work. I don't understand why it is Clovis. The cat.
Hey, Clovis. The legend.
He is the legend.
Hey, Clovis. Hey, buddy. The habeas corpus has always been fungible in the eyes of many administrations, not least of which Abraham Lincoln in the Supreme Court. And here's the part, and there's a precedent here. The Supreme Court ruled that the president doesn't have the power to waive habeas corpus.
Right.
And Lincoln said, I can't hear, la, 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 I can't hear you, and ignored the Supreme Court. That set a precedent now going forward where, the Trump administration can do the same thing and just start, sending out and prosecuting people who are clearly in opposition to the administration. If you're at all interested in history, and I hate to, dive into the deep end of the hyperbole pool, but you look at the rise of Hitler, you look at the rise of National Socialism in Germany in the 1930s. This is not unlike that ascent. To say, well, he doesn't have the stormtroopers, really, because I'd say January 6th says that he does.
I would say the ICE guys are stormtroopers.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. I believe that we are potentially on that arc. Problem is, and that's why I want Ted and I to get ahead of this, is by the time you say, oh shit, okay, this is really happening, it's too late.
True. It might be, I think we're approaching too late soon. I was thinking about
what is too late. What's too late? What is too late?
I'll tell you what too late looks like to me as a U.S. citizen, white, able-bodied, Ivy League educated, cis male. It looks like I'm thinking about next time I travel outside of the United States, do I want to take the chance of traveling outside of the United States, understanding that there might be a problem when I try to return? At bare minimum, I don't think it would be a lot to wonder if I might just be fucked with and detained for say 12 hours just for fun. Oh, we were just checking out a few things, Mr. Rall, and then let me in, right? Do I want to do that? I think about that, for example, when I go to Israel. Last time I went to every time I go to Israel, I get treated like shit. I get detained for hours and hours at Ben Gurion Airport by Mossad, by shit-eating grin Mossad agents. And I'm like, I'm interested in going to Israel. I'd be interested in going now. It's good tourism and there's a lot of good politics there to cover. But I think about it like, do I really want? And that's like I think when you start thinking that way, that means they're getting their way. This is about, they're trying to make us afraid. All right, well, okay, you win. I'm starting to get afraid.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'm thinking more to the point that when you leave, like when you said, when you come back and you're on the Trump enemies list, because both you and I have gone on record as being, a lot of the policies that Trump has and being anti-Trump. You're on that list. You try to get back in the country and you get disappeared. Again, that's that type of thing. Now you can come back and say, well, that would never happen. Well, guess what, folks? This past week, it just did. Like I said, they're going to pick.
Here's the thing. So here's the thing, Scott. This reminds me of I don't know if you ever read Goldfarber's. You probably did. His book, Hitler's Willing Executioners, that came out like maybe 25 years ago, and it kind of basically was. There used to be this cliche that people in Germany during Nazism, they had to follow orders and do bad things to Jews and others because they were themselves afraid of the regime, right? In other words, it's kind of like, someone puts a gun to my head and says, Ted, shoot Scott. And if I don't, then they're going to shoot me. Well, he totally so he proved that was not the case, right? And it would be like, basically, for example, they tracked all these pogroms that the Nazis started in the early days of the Holocaust in occupied Poland, which was called the General Government under the Nazi regime. And there was so when they first started this, like, okay, well, we're going to start the final solution. There was a division in the Nazi hierarchy, and they were like, okay, so what if people freak out? What if we start rounding up people, and then Germans, ethnic Germans, good Aryans, get upset because we're beating up and abducting their neighbors and their friends and their family members. So what are we going to do? So we could have civil unrest. We're about to fight a war. We're fighting a war. That would be bad. So they were like, okay, all right, you're right. So we'll test market. We're gonna have a dry run for the Holocaust. And this book describes it. And in several towns in Poland, what they did is they installed spies at like the local cafe, at the mayor's office, at the bar, and they had a big roundup where they came in at night, Nazi goons. They rounded up a bunch of men, women, and children, Jewish. And in the middle of the night, there was screaming and hollering. They beat people up, incredible violence, horrible acts. And then the next day, the spies kept track of the public reaction, right? Like, so they, what happened? And indeed, there were a few complaints. Some people trundled down to the mayor's office and said, my next door neighbor is a kindly old woman, and these guys threw her off the balcony of her own apartment and killed her, like right in the street. Like, you have to charge them; they're murderers. And like, there were a few things like that, but not much. And when they assessed everything, they were like, this worked. We could do this. Basically, there'll be a little bit of kvetching, but for the most part, no one's going to give a shit. And that's where we are now. It's like, if the first time it happened, let me just say, point to another country. If this happened in Madagascar, if it happened in Benin, if it happened in France, people would be out in the streets by the millions. Okay. It's like the population of no other country would be this docile. In Japan, people would freak out. It's like not allowed. In the US, the fact that we're letting it go the way that the Germans let it go and the Poles let it go, that's why it's going to get worse, because we should have nipped it in the bud, and we're not. It's like there should be major civil unrest. There's not.
See, I can't top that. I think you're absolutely right. So we may be past the tipping point and just not realize it. Good times. Well, on the plus side, Ted, I'll see you in camp. Camp sounds fun.
I've always wanted to be in camp with you.
Yeah, we can make like combed cozies and the little lanyards. It'll be fun. It's fun. There's horseback riding, I hear. There's showers.
Maybe there might be showers. Yeah. No, I do think we have to think. They're trying to make us afraid, right? And it's kind of like you could say the only, the only thing to fear is fear itself. Well, there is to fear is a vast, a high-tech authoritarian government apparatus that knows everything about you and can nail you anytime it wants. I'm afraid of that too. If you're not afraid of that, you're stupid. I'm afraid for sure. And I mean, are they coming specifically for Ted Rall? Maybe, maybe not. But the fact is, they're definitely going to go with the low-hanging fruit first. They thought, oh, we'll get this guy. He's Syrian. He's not the best looking. We're going to accuse him of anti-Semitism. If you're anti-Israel, you're anti-Semitic by definition. So therefore, people will not care. And for the most part, people don't really care. Yeah, there's some loud, a few thousand people will do a protest. In a city like mine of 8 million, that's nothing. I mean, so, I mean, anything under 20,000 people is not going to be noticed in a city like New York. So,
well, and we've had this discussion on this podcast privately. We've had it with other people. And my take has always been exactly what you just said, Ted. People won't care. And so by the time it rises to the level where they will begin to care, it'll be long past time to rectify it. And
yeah, at that point, it becomes more about saving your own skin and just trying to escape. Yeah.
And let's say you and I are on a list, or, you've protested, or you've written a piece, disparaging the Orange One's greatness.
Or doing a podcast with your best friend where you talk shit about the government and call them a bunch of fascist Nazi assholes, which they are.
You all of a sudden you start to disappear. You start to be taken away. I have said for a long time now that Americans won't care when it's not them. They just won't give a shit. The example you made, Hitler's assassins, the towns in Poland. That's exactly what would happen here. Hey, my truck still works. Gas is $2 a gallon. I like the Goldensteins, but oh well. The new people moving in seem nice too. It's like it'll be that. And it will grow. And if this is allowed to continue, having an enemies list, as Trump laughed and said, that's a good idea. Okay, that's where we're headed, and no one really gives a shit. I mean, is there anything that, I have to ask this question. Is there anything that anyone can do to make that change? Is there any way to get people to care? They're ripping apart the institutions that should be protecting and addressing these things. We're used to having the government, a government that's not out to imprison us, address these issues. And they, Trump and Musk, are actively dismantling those mechanisms even as we speak. Is there something to be done? Is there something that can be done? I mean, it's happening so fast. And the reason I make this comparison is when the Nazis ascended to power in 1933, in 6 months, all of the institutions in Germany that were democratic were gone or nullified. And they had the Nullification Act. It's, and let Hitler be Hitler. This is moving incredibly quickly. And people are feeling the best the polls show, Ted, and this, the best the polls shows are Americans are, they're a little uncomfortable with it. That's the best.
Yeah.
Now, it seems to me, the issues that have been near and dear to my heart since I was a kid, free speech rights, civil liberties, those things are being eroded quickly. And when they disappear, it's very hard to get those back without a whole lot of trouble. And that's what we're hurtling towards. And I would say in 6 to 8 months, Ted, if we are where you and I are kind of predicting we will be, game over. Game over. This country will not be the America you and I knew. That it won't be the America you and I grew up in. It'll be a very changed place and a lot of fear. That'll be the motivator. is scaring the piss out of people so they don't fight back. I mean, how many people in Germany, Ted, you know this, how many people in Germany after the war said, well, things seem to be working pretty well. I don't know what the problem was. I mean, many Germans were like, we're like, yeah, I was going to work and, at the factory, and things were good and the economy was okay. And, no one was bothering me. Why in the world did all this happen to us? I mean, seriously, it's just like, you step back and you have to, it's kind of hilarious in its way, but that was not a minority view of Germany following World War II, following the surrender. So in America,
and the media is pretty useless right now. I mean, they've been gutted, and what's left is suicide. They're committing suicide. I mean, and Congress is useless.
Congress is more than useless. Congress should be beside itself in terms of the power that has been stripped away from it with these executive orders. I mentioned this last podcast, Alexander Hamilton, saying that one part of the government handling the purse strings, another part handling the military, that will lead to, the republic lasting. And this administration has wiped out and taken over the powers of the purse. And I know this is a different issue, but I happen to think that I've kind of come to the point where the continuing resolutions to fund the American government are stupid and a distraction to real governing. But for Schumer, should he have acquiesced, as he did the past 48 hours? He said that the Democrats will vote for the continuing resolution, so there won't be a government shutdown. I mean, shit, Musk and Trump are already working towards a government shutdown already. 80,000 employees at the VA. That's going to be pretty bad.
They were short-staffed before.
Oh yeah, can you imagine 80,000 people? Now add the 80,000 to the 10,000 that the Postal Service said they're going to cut. Add that to the 20,000 the Agriculture Department. Start doing the numbers, and the job growth numbers that were fairly positive this last month are going to be catastrophic. You're going to see unemployment. You're going to see an aggregate job loss of the hundreds of thousands.
True. Although the judges are coming out and saying, like, you've got to rehire them. You can't fire them this way. It's not right.
Well, the idea that, that Trump has said, and the courts have ruled numerous times that the president cannot step over the legislature's right of budgeting, and this stuff has already been budgeted for. But that doesn't mean that next year the Trumpazoids aren't going to say, yeah, you know what, we really do need to cut 80,000 people from the VA. Which is weird because those are their people, right? I mean, it just seems politically stupid to do that. I don't know, and I'm wondering if the chaos is part and parcel of this whole strategy that we're hypothesizing about. That if you are going to take over and be a de facto fascist entity, extreme confusion is not a bad tool. I mean, it's really not.
True. Well, and that was a tool that Hitler used to great effect in Nazi Germany. I mean, Donald Trump is no Hitler in that he's not as organized at all. But it's it's frightening how easily this is happening, how quickly it's happening, and I got to say, I'm very pessimistic. I don't think. I mean, I got to be real here. I don't think we're going to come back from this. I think it's just going to get worse before it gets.
Well, what about going?
What about for a long time?
What about going into the midterms, which clearly is the Democratic strategy now, is to just let them fuck up, let the economy tank. And
that's the Schumer strategy. And by the way, I'm sympathetic to it. Well, I'm sympathetic to the general idea that, like, so right now, Doge and Musk and those, they're cutting so many jobs. Obviously, now things are going to stop working, right? Like, tax refund checks are not going to go out on time. Social Security checks are not going to be received on time. Old people are going to be upset. It's going to be so. Schumer doesn't want any confusion there. If he shuts down the government, it's like, well, then, Musk can say, well, that's not us. That's the Democrats. They shut down the government. So I get why he's like, it's a trap. We're not going that way. I totally get it. I probably would have done the same thing, although I probably would have broadcast that earlier instead of saying, no, we're going to shut down the government, and then flip-flopping the very next day, as usual. Terrible politics, terrible messaging. But probably in the end, it was the right call. The problem is, I don't think we have until November of 2026. And I'm not sure you can count on like, widespread disdain of the GOP translating in, first of all, even materializing, much less translating into a national sweep like 1994 with Newt Gingrich or 1974 with the Democrats following Watergate. I don't think that the Democrats are organized right now to be able to nationalize a midterm election. I don't think they know how to do it. I don't even think it's even occurred to them that they should do it.
And that the argument's going to be, well, we're not the Republicans, which may be.
Yeah, because Republicans know how to win.
Well, there's that. But if that's your only platform, that we're not them, how'd that work for you in the last presidential election?
They think it'll work. They thought it was going to work in 2016. They think it worked in 2020, and it kind of barely did. Barely. Yeah. And then it didn't work again. I mean, it's not a good strategy. I mean, let's just stipulate that it worked 1 out of 3 times. If your car only starts 1 out of every 3 times, you're not psyched.
Yeah, and I don't know that the only way you can get through what I suspect economically is about to happen to us, which is, happens to people when they go to prison. It's going to be, it could be so catastrophic, but if the Democrats continue to stand for nothing, if they don't take the Ted Rall, we talked about this in another podcast, if they don't take the Ted Rall approach, which is have a contract with America type, a type of document ready. If you don't have 3 things that you believe in, that as a Democrat, here's what we're going to fix, then what's my motivation to vote for them? And they showed that what happens in America, God bless America, is that people don't vote in huge numbers and vote, intellectually. If there's no alternative, they simply don't show up. So I'm thinking in the November 2026 election, the Republicans could very easily gain seats in both the House and the Senate. I even if the economy is in the crapper.
Yeah, if you don't nationalize the election, that's true. And nationalizing a midterm election is a huge uphill battle. Newt Gingrich was a kind of a genius to have pulled it off.
Yeah,
it's like Democrats don't have any geniuses. Seriously, who's the smartest one?
I haven't seen them.
No.
They don't seem, if they're around, they're hiding really well. So when the shit really hits the fan, Ted, let me know who the smart Democrats are, because I can hide with them.
Yeah.
When the stormtroopers come for me.
I know we think, look, for public consumption, hello, Donald Trump. We know you watch the podcast, and we appreciate it, and we love you.
More than anything. You're the father we never had.
You are. And like a wife, really. But definitely do not, we will leave. You don't have to kill us. We will leave. So,
yes.
Okay.
Just hold the door open. We'll walk out.
Bye. Yes. Yeah. So, all right.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, all right, I think that's a good place to leave it. I'm depressed as shit. No question.
Oh, I am too. I am very much. And I wish we could be more upbeat. I have friends who continue to say the institutions in place in America are strong enough to hold. Donald Trump is showing that unless people believe and are willing to stand up and defend them, those institutions don't mean anything.
That's exactly correct.
That's
all right, Scott. With that, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna hit the outro, and we will see you guys when we see you guys, or maybe never again. You never know. Bye.
Well, it would be from camp, Ted. Camp.
Oh, right. That's the wrong one.
Every time you have to slide in that little thing about your other show, the other show you're seeing, the other whore.